Hey guys, it's Mr. Mini Painter, and today I'm painting Kili from the Lord of the Rings Middle-earth strategy battle game. He's one of the dwarves of Thorin's Company, and I'm painting the entire range of those dwarves. And so this is how I painted Kili. First I base coated it with a black primer and added some modeling sand to the base. And that's our starting point. So let's start off with the face, and for that I'm using Night Questor Flesh. There are different ways to paint skin tones, and I hop back and forth from either using the traditional Bugman's Glow Cadian Flesh tone, Kislev Flesh, to this Night Questor and Kislev Flesh. And this second layer of Kislev Flesh I apply as a thick cover on the raised areas of the skin, and then I thin down the paint and kind of wash in the rest. So that way you get a nice transition of colors from the darkness of the Night Questor Flesh and the highlighted raised areas with Kislev Flesh. So I hope this makes any sense. It's kind of a practice deal, but you'll get there. The eyes are painted with Palette Witch Flesh. The problem with these dwarves is that they are so incredibly tiny. I mean, you can see my fingers here and the face is smaller than my fingertip. So imagine the eyes, they are a hell to paint. And I had to redo some of the skin areas with the Night Questor Flesh to fix it up. Abaddon Black for the pupils, and then we continue to the hair with Rhinox Hide. There's not a lot of hair showing with this guy because he has his hood on top of his head, so it's just some pieces of hair left and right. We're gonna highlight that with Mournfang Brown, so just focus on the top part and the front edges of those strands of hair, just to give it a nice appearance and make it stand out just a little bit more. Next we are mixing Incubi Darkness with some Abaddon Black for the inner part of the coat. That includes the hood, and the entire inside of his suit. We're highlighting it with pure Incubi Darkness, so leave those deeper recesses nice and dark, but cover about 60% with pure Incubi Darkness. And next we're brightening it up a little bit more by adding some Palette Witch Flesh to the Incubi Darkness to create some edge highlights, and some with some thinned down version you can fill in and kind of blend those colors together if you want. I like edge highlights, but sometimes I like this wet blending as well. That way you can create a smooth transition between colors. I'm using Talarn sand to create some stitches along these bands on his inner coat. So I made some diagonal lines, as you can see here, and crossed them over so you get nice crosses. So it looks something like this. There's a tiny part on his upper body visible, and the rest is covered with his larger coat. So you get a nice detail on these tiny dwarfs. For the outer coat, I mixed dried bark with Abaddon Black and painted the entire coat. I then highlighted this with pure dried bark. Again, focused on the raised areas, the top parts of the coat. And do some edge highlights if you want. And we're brightening that up again with Palette Witch Flesh as well, to to give it a edge highlight and the very, very tips of those raised areas. Again, you can do wet blending if you want. Just water down your paint a little bit or use some Lamia medium and blend those colors together. For the strap around his waist, I used dried bark. I wanted it to be a bit of a same color for all those parts and not many different kind of browns as I did with other dwarves. I painted the scabbard of his sword with the same color and also the quiver on his back with pure dried bark. Gives it a nice bright look. With a dry brush, I applied dried bark on his knees, the parts of the pants that are showing, and gives it a nice worn leathery look. Also the wrist pads are painted with dried bark. Don't forget the 2 fingers, because he's an archer and he wears this archer glove. Then I'm highlighting these parts with Baneblade brown. So the wrist pads, also the shoulder strap, give that a nice edge highlight. The scabbard of the sword, and the quiver on the back I also gave an edge highlight of Baneblade brown. Then there are some metal spikes on his lower arms, which I painted with lead belcher. They are extremely tiny, so make sure you have a fine tip and you can kind of dab that paint on there if you know what I mean. I also painted the tips of his bow with lead belcher and of course his sword. And there is a buckle in the middle of his belt. Then with some fulgurite copper, I kind of brought some color into this model by adding the tips, the hilt tips of the hilt of the sword, both swords actually. Otherwise he's quite boring in colors. He's kind of a dark dwarf, isn't he? I highlighted the metals, the gold parts, with some canoptic alloy. Just focus on the very tops of the swords and then give the leather straps a wash with Agrax Earthshade. I also applied this to the scabbard and to the quiver on his back. And a tiny bit to his shoulders. In the deepest recesses of the coat. You can do it if you want. With Doomble Brown, I tried to create a grip on his swords. Just add 2 or 3 lines. That way it's a very nice detail to make it stand out a bit more. Then Dark Reaper I used on his, well, how do you call these things? His wrist, his lower arm protection thingies, as an edge highlight to make them pop out just a little bit more as well. And then highlight those metal parts with Stormhost Silver. So the spikes on his wrists, the edges of the sword and of the bow, and make it nice and shiny. Then Mechanica Standard Grey I used on the boots and also give that some edge highlighting. With a dry brush I applied some rock art flesh to the lower part of the cloak of his coat to make it look a bit worn. Make sure to wipe off most of the paint, because you don't want any actual color there, just some discoloration. Last part, some rock art flesh to the feathers of the arrows. Then the wooden parts I painted with Rhinox hide. Don't forget the tips of the arrow, the top part showing there. And finally I washed everything with some Seraphim sepia. If you want, you can highlight it afterwards with rock art flesh again. And there he is, Kili, one of the dwarves of Thorin's Company, which I really enjoyed painting. I'm doing a series on all those dwarves, so if you like this kind of videos, please consider subscribing to my channel and please leave a comment because I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Bye bye!